Hello, Mallards. It's Thursday. Today I took a walk with Megan to Twisty Treat. I had rehearsal, and I also last night finished Tink and Wendy by Kellyanne Jacobson. And spoilers for this book, if you ever plan to read it. The basic summary is that it is a story that is in 3 parts, and these 3 parts are like split apart and interspersed. So you have the story that is happening now, which is Tink living in New York, like upstate New York, in modern times, clearly depressed, drinking a lot of alcohol, and runs into Wendy's granddaughter, Hope, and is sort of recounting her life. And then you have the then portion, which is when Peter and Tink end up in New York and meet the Darlings, and sort of the story that's happening then when they meet the Darlings and they're staying, and Tink is trying to convince Peter to return to Neverland, and he doesn't really want to go. So rather than like the type of story where like Peter shows up at the Darlings and he whisks them away to Neverland, it is that like he came and stayed because he liked them, and like Tink is trying to get him to go back to Neverland. And then interspersed between the now and thens, you also have these parts of Neverland history, like Neverland a History, a book that has been published about the history of Neverland that gives information on like the mermaids and Tinkerbell and Peter Pan and the Pirate War and just all of these other like Neverland history things. And here is the thing about this book. I really enjoyed those Neverland history sections. I thought they were interesting. I thought that the version of a Neverland that had been created in this story, where the idea is that the fairies found a Neverland that was populated with animals and plants, and they brought in some other species, the Lost Boys, the mermaids, the Candelanians is probably how you say it, which are the like other humans who live there who aren't the Lost Boys, who would be like the natives in the original Neverland story, but they're like an alien race in this. And essentially Neverland is like another dimension that exists like separate from our world, and Candelanian or Candelania or wherever the Candelanians are from is like another place that exists. So like the Lost Boys, they were like just brought from their world to Neverland. Anyway, and then the fairies are essentially come from their own realm and sort of have created this Neverland and watch over it. And Tinkerbell was assigned by the Fairy Queen to guard Peter Pan, who was deemed the leader of the Lost Boys. And so like that's her post, is to like watch over them. And that's kind of cool. And then the rest of the stories and like how they discuss the creation of Neverland is really interesting. I thought that that world building was great, except that we literally spend a chapter and a half in Neverland in total. That's not quite true. Some of the then stuff is about Neverland. So maybe 5 chapters are spent in Neverland. So they built this world out, and then most of the story takes place in New York, which I don't have a problem with per se, but it really did feel like a lot of this didn't need to be Peter Pan. Like, I'm not sure why it was Peter Pan. But if you're going chronologically through the story, it's essentially that Tink and Peter end up in New York. They run into the Darlings. Peter likes them. Tink is like, no, we gotta go back. And Peter's like, no, I don't want to go back. Wendy's cute. And Tink is like, you're right. Wendy is kind of cute. Okay, but we should still go back. But Wendy is kind of cute. No, we should go back. Like, let's go back. And then Peter's like, no, I'm not going to go back. I'm just going to have all sorts of fun. Also, I lost Michael. He's in the woods somewhere. And Tink is like, I'm going to save Michael. Guess what? I'm mad at Peter. I don't love him anymore. Like, I was kind of crushing on him, and I realized in this moment that he was so irresponsible and almost let Michael die that I'm not in love with him anymore. But I am sort of in love with Wendy, which is a problem. But we need to leave. But Peter and Wendy are getting kind of serious. Ooh, they're getting like real serious. Oh no, Wendy's pregnant. She told Peter. Peter freaked out and decided to go back to Neverland. But when he got there, he was all depressed. And Tink was like, I don't know what to do. What do I do with a depressed Peter? He's not supposed to be depressed. One of the things about Neverland is that you like forget. So he should like forget Wendy, move on with his life. But it's not happening. Why isn't it happening? And the mermaids are like, because a fish with no water is just dinner. Which is to say, like, he can't live a life without Wendy. And she's like, ugh, this is so frustrating. Fine, let's go back. But then it's been a while, and Wendy's all like, no, you guys just, like, ran away and left me when I said that I was pregnant. And so, like, I'm mad at you, and I don't want any of this. And Peter's like, no, but love me. And Wendy's like, no, I won't. I'm going to prom with this other guy, and I don't want to hear anything from you. Please be gone. And then so she gets in a limo, and then Peter's like, I'm going to drive this car and chase her. And Tink's like, you can't drive a car. And Peter's like, I'm going to figure out how to drive a car right now. I've never driven a car in my life, but I'm going to do it. And then he gets in the car and then he drives. And then Tink like flies along. And then Wendy like looks out of the sunroof in their limo and is like, oh my God, Tink is flying. What? Because, you know, they'd pretended they were from Canada this whole time. And then Peter's like, I need you. And Wendy's like, leave me alone. And then Peter's like, I can't. And then he like swerves the car around the limo to like, I don't even know, cut them off. Who knows? Crashes into an oncoming car. Dies. Peter Pan dies. I'm going to say it again. Peter Pan dies. So he dies. And Wendy is tossed from the limo, very pregnant. And she like lands on the ground. And Tink's like, oh no. And gets her to a hospital. And the hospital is like, at Wendy's request, we have given her an emergency C-section, so we've saved the baby, but she's dying. And Tink's like, no. And Tink goes in there, and then she, like, cuts off her own wings with a scalpel and sews them onto Wendy so that the wings will fly her back to Neverland. And then she puts the boy up for adoption. And then she stays on Earth, despite the fact that her wings can just, like, grow back. And she keeps, like, chopping them off or, like, burning them off with acid, like, keeping her wings away. And she watches over the little boy as he grows up, like, a little bit. And then she just, like, takes care of the Darlings' house. John and Michael don't know Wendy had a kid. They were told that the kid died because Wendy didn't want them to, like, have the responsibility. So they don't know that the kid survived, and they just, like, went on and lived their lives, and who knows? We don't really see them. They're just mentioned. And Tinkerbell's just, like, essentially just, like, living in her depression in a little cabin near the Darlings' house where she, like, sometimes checks on the Darlings' house and then goes to, like, Peter and Wendy's graves and is just, like, sad all the time and drinks entirely too much. And then Hope, who is Wendy's granddaughter, the daughter of the son that Tink gave away, like, shows up. And she's like, I don't know what's going on here, but, like, here I found this old picture, and look, it's you, and you look the same. So, like, tell me who you really are. And then Tink's like, all right, let me tell you this whole story. And then she's like, oh, and by the way, your grandmother isn't dead. Like, I know I told you that she was dead because, like, we were sort of pretending that she was dead, but she's not dead. I sent her to Neverland. And then Hope's like, well, if she's in Neverland and you love her, then why are you here? And Tink's like, because I got Peter Pan killed. And Hope's like, that seems like a dumb reason. Like, people do bad things, but you deserve happiness. So, like, go to Neverland. And Tink's like, okay, fine, I'll go to Neverland. And then she goes to Neverland. And then Wendy is the leader of the Lost Boys. And Tink's like, hi, I'm here. And Wendy's like, I don't think I know you, but also, like, I've got this painting on my wall, and it's a picture of you, and it says something, but I can't read anymore. And Tink's like, I can read. It says, turn me over. And then you flip it over, and it's like, this is Tinkerbell. She saved your life, and you love her, but you don't remember her. When she tells you her story, be kind. And so then Tink's like, let me tell you a story. And then it's like, flash forward, Tink and Wendy are holding hands, and they're, like, flying around together, and they see Hope, a little more grown up, with her own child, and, like, oh, wow, so cute. And Wendy's maybe gonna talk to her, but then they don't. And then they just fly away. And it's, I was told it was gonna be a queer story, and then I felt like the story itself had a little bit of Tink being like, Wendy's cute, but not, like, really any queerness until the epilogue, and even then not really any queerness. Like, it ended queer, but the story itself wasn't queer. Although it is mentioned that Hope had several girlfriends but like that also is just like a throwaway line said by Hope's mom at some point. And I also just didn't feel the like Peter Pan-ness of it all. Like if there hadn't been those Neverland history chapters, I would have really felt like it wasn't a Peter Pan story. Like wasn't a Neverland story at all. And I just wish that the story had been based more in the interesting world of Neverland that this author created and less in New York. And also that it had been like based a little bit more around Tink and Wendy's actual story a little bit more. It was Tink's story. And I don't necessarily mind like the narrative switches, the like now and then thing I thought was kind of cool. It's kind of fun to like bounce back and forth, even though I got a little bit lost and there were bits of it where like then was something she was telling Hope. And so like when you finish the then section and move to now, Hope was like acknowledging what had just happened in the then section. And then sometimes when that didn't happen, so that was a little bit weird. But mostly I didn't feel like it was Peter Pan enough to need to be about Tink and Peter and Wendy. And I also didn't feel like it had enough Neverland. So that's where I said it was a really quick read though. Unlike this video, which is very long. So let's stop it here and I'll see you tomorrow.